Hello, everyone. Hello, 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 and welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Listen, I am really, really, really excited to bring this conversation to those of you today who are thinking about starting a nonprofit, or for those of you that have already started for a nonprofit. I'm really excited about where we're going this year. I am in the midst of rebranding, I'm in the midst of refocusing, and my focus this year is really helping organizations put together their structure, putting together their systems, their tools, so that they understand not just how to do the program, but also how to run the organization. It's the running of the organization that prepares you to get the resources, to get the funding, to get the money to operate. There are two hats that you wear. You wear a program hat and you wear an administrative entity hat, right? That's the organization. And a lot of organizations are failing. They are struggling. They are not able to accomplish the work that they really are passionate about accomplishing. Why? Because their organization, their administrative entity, has not been set up properly. So this year, that is my focus, is working for those of you that say, Jen, I'm tired of struggling. Jen, I'm tired of trying to figure it out on my own. Jen, I'm ready to really step up and step into the real purpose of our organization, which is not just to have a program, but to benefit the community in a real way and to build that trust and credibility with your community, who then would be inspired and inclined to support your work because they understand your work, they understand the importance of their work, and they understand how your work truly does solve problem in your community. Today, I want to talk about how your donors, your funders, your supporters, your contributors, how those capital, right, investing entities, those that are giving the grants, those that are making the donations, those that are making the contributions, how do they decide who is ready for their money? All right. How do they make that decision? How do grant funders make a decision on who gives the grant or who gets the grant? I am a grant writer. I've been writing grants now for 39 years. This year is 40. Not only am I a grant writer, I'm also a grant reviewer. I'm a professional fundraiser. So making those clear articulation to the case for support to those that are making a determination on if they're going to support our work or not, I'm an expert in that. So I want to really talk about this in a very direct way. Okay. I want to thank you all for listening. I want to thank you all for liking. I want to thank you all for sharing. I want to thank you all for being a part of this conversation. And I know that once you get the knowledge, get the information, get the instruction that you need, your organization really can be and should be fully funded, right? But let's talk about what it is that causes your organization to struggle. All right. I want to say something that a lot of you, as nonprofit leaders, are thinking, but don't know how to say out loud. Okay. I want to start by saying something that a lot of you are thinking, but don't know how to say out loud. Okay. You're doing great work. You're helping real people. You're showing up consistently. And yet, nobody seems to know you exist. Funders keep telling you, come back when you have capacity. Your board isn't fundraising. You're doing everything yourself. You're chasing grants with no systems, no data, and no donor pipeline. And you're sitting there thinking, what am I missing? What am I missing? Right? You've been doing this work within your program year after year after year after year after year. And you're thinking to yourself, what am I missing? How come this is not moving forward? How come I can't get funding? And today I want to talk about those exact questions. Okay. Because funding doesn't go to the organizations that are trying the hardest. Funding goes to the organizations that look ready to handle it. I'm going to explain today, plain and simple, how funders, your donors, your supporters, your contributors, those that are making decisions on grants, how do they decide who is ready for money? And why good work alone does not answer that question. Okay? And there's a huge myth that keeps a lot of you stuck. Most nonprofit leaders believe funding decisions or those decisions made by the donor, the sponsor, the grant funder, they believe that those decisions are based on how big the need is, or how emotional the story is, or how hard they're working, or how many people that they serve. That sounds logical. It also feels fair, right? You're doing all the work, you're out here hustling, you're making a difference, you're working hard. So you would think that that's what they're making the decision on. But it's not how funding decisions are made. Those capital issuing authorities, those that are making the decision on how they're going to distribute their money, okay? What is it that compels, that inspires, that motivates, that causes them to make the decision to donate, to contribute, right? They're going to donate, they're going to contribute. They're going to either give the money that they have to the nonprofit, or they're going to give it to the IRS as taxes, right? They're going to give it to the IRS, or they're going to give it to an organization. So you want to be aware of how does your organization position itself to receive the funding that is already going to be given out. All right. It's going to either go to a nonprofit or it's going to go to the IRS. If it goes to the nonprofit, they at least know where their money is going. If it goes to the IRS, the government has control over how those dollars, those tax dollars are used. Right. So here's the truth. Funders are not deciding whether your work matters. They're deciding whether your organization can manage money responsibly. And that's a very different decision. Many of you think they're going to make a decision based upon your passion, based upon the work that you're doing, based upon the number of people that you serve, based upon how hard you're working, right? So when a funder looks at you, they're not asking, are they kind? Are they passionate? Are they busy? Are they committed? Right? That's not what they're asking. They are asking, is this organization stable? Is it organized? Is it risky? Will we regret giving them money? That's the lens. The why? We're doing great work, but nobody knows we exist. Why does that happen? Why does it happen that you're doing great work, but you are the best kept secret? You are the best kept secret. Nobody knows you exist. That's not only a visibility problem, it's a translation problem. Put translation in the chat. It's a translation problem. You know that your work matters, and the people you serve know it matters. But the funder, the donor, the supporter, the contributor, those capital issuing authorities, they don't see how you operate. They don't see how you make decisions. They don't see how you manage money. They don't see how you measure results. They don't see how you plan ahead because none of that is visible unless it's intentionally built and communicated. From a funder's perspective, I want you to put yourself in the funder's shoes. Okay? If they can't quickly understand how your organization works, remember, your organization and your program are two different things. If they can't understand how your organization works, if your story changes depending on who you talk to, if there's no clear explanation of how the work is supported, then the work doesn't feel investable, even if it's meaningful. Are you all understanding what I'm saying? Sometimes you might hear, come back when you have capacity. Come back when you have capacity. That's usually the comment in a major gift conversation or in a grant funding conversation. Okay. And you might be thinking, that sounds vague. That sounds dismissive, right? That even sounds unfair. Or you may be thinking, what the devil does that mean? But let me tell you, it's very, very specific. When you hear that statement, it's very specific. Here is what capacity means. Capacity means you have systems, not just effort. It means you have people doing defined roles. It means you have ways to track the money. It means you have ways to track results. It means you are not dependent on one person. For those of you that say, Jen, I'm the nonprofit. I'm the only funder for the nonprofit. I pay for everything in the organization, right? From the funder's perspective, capacity means you can grow without collapsing. When a funder says capacity, they're saying we don't see the internal support structure yet. I'm going to say that again. We don't see the internal, the organizational support structure yet. They're not saying your mission isn't good. They're not saying they don't like you. They're not even saying that the need isn't real. But what they are saying is, we don't see how this organization holds itself together. This is an organizational issue. This is not a passion issue, right? So this is for those of you that are saying, Jen, I'm paying for everything out of my pocket. Jen, we don't have a budget. Jen, we don't have a fundraising plan. Jen, we don't have financials. Jen, I don't have a board. Jen, I don't know how to find a board. Jen, I don't know how to start donors. Jen, funding is my biggest issue. That's an organizational issue. And they're saying we don't see capacity. We don't see how this organization is holding itself together. And if they don't see how you're holding the organization together beyond your passion, then you are not investable. And the issue is that you have a board and that they're not fundraising is a huge red flag. Jen, I have board members, but my board isn't fundraising. Jen, I have board members, but they're not engaged. Jen, I have board members, but they're not active. Jen, I don't know how to find board members. And that means what? You are doing everything. This matters more than you realize, right? This matters more than you realize. To a funder, to a capital issuing authority, the donor, the funder, the supporter, the contributor, this signals weak leadership structure, unclear expectations, lack of shared responsibility, high risk of burnout. You know what it's like when you all burn out and then all of a sudden just quit, right? Jen, I'm burnt out. We're done. Jen, I've been doing this for so long. We had to stop because I couldn't continue to do it by myself. That's over dependence on one person. And honestly, the funders do not want to fund organizations that depend on one exhausted founder to survive. I'm going to say that again. They do not want to give money to an organization that depends on one exhausted person to survive. They want to see shared leadership, shared accountability, shared responsibility for money. When the board is not engaged, funders quietly think if the board won't invest their time and energy, why should we invest our money? That's not personal. That's not personal. If the board won't invest their time and energy, why should we invest our money? Now, for those of you that say, well, Jen, how do I find board members? How do I find board members? When you became a nonprofit organization, you stated that you knew how to find board members. Now, how come all of a sudden you don't know how to find board members? Oh, because you put your mother, your brother, your dog, your cat, your fish on that board list to get the piece of paper, not to understand their roles and responsibility, or even how to onboard board members, or even how to interview board members, or even to understand why would people want to become a board member and what then are their roles and responsibilities. You skipped over all of that just to say, I got my piece of paper, I got my 501c3. But now you don't have board. You don't have an engaged board. Why is that? I don't know what to do. That's a risk assessment. That's a risk assessment. So when you now don't know how to structure your organization properly, how then can they expect to give you money and think that you're going to know how to spend it properly? Listen, I know it's not your fault. I know it's not your fault because who told you? Who showed you? Right? Particularly if those of you who are starting this thing with no experience, no guidance, you're just kind of making it up as you go. I get it. It is not your fault. But you do have to take responsibility for staying in a place of not knowing. That's your responsibility alone. That if you don't know what to do, you don't know how to do it, you do know that. You do know that you're stuck and you don't know how to get unstuck. That you know. You do know that you started something, but you don't know how to put it together. You know that. So being stuck is choice. How you got stuck, you don't know how you got stuck. And now you don't know how to get unstuck. That's your responsibility. Money won't solve that. Money won't solve that. You'll spend the money and then be stuck again and not know how to get unstuck, right? This is risk assessment that your donors, your funders, your supporters, they're considering that when they're thinking, is this a safe place to put my money? And for those of you that say, Jen, I started my nonprofit, I'm looking for a grant. Jen, that's why I need a grant. I need a grant, Jen. But chasing grants without systems don't work. It doesn't work, right? Here's the reality. The people that say to me, Jen, do you write grants? Yes, I write grants. Jen, I've applied for grants, but we haven't gotten any grants. Let me say this honestly. Grants are not starter money. I'm going to say that again. For those of you that get your piece of paper, get your 501c3, and now you're waiting for a grant to kickstart you, right? Jen, I need a grant to start. Jen, is there a startup grant? Jen, is there money that will get me going? This is the reality. Grants are not starter money. They are expansion money. Grants, the grant funder assumes you already have a tracking system, financial controls, reporting processes, leadership capacity, sustainability planning. When those things don't exist, the grant application fails, not because the writing is bad, but because the organization isn't ready. I cannot tell you all the number of people who said, Jen, I paid a grant writer, but we didn't get the grant. Now, first of all, you don't pay a grant writer to get you a grant. The grant writer cannot get you a grant. Okay? You're not paying a grant writer to get a grant. You are paying a grant writer to do the professional response to the grant application, to the questions, to the query, right? Presenting a professional case for support. However, the grant funder is not making a decision only and solely on what is written. They're also looking at the organization. They're looking at the structure of the organization. They're looking for your budget. They're looking for your financials. They're looking at your 990. They're looking at your plan for sustainability. Those are things outside the scope of the grant funder. That's your job. That's the organizational work that goes into the consideration on who gets the grant. I just want to be clear. Don't burn the grant writer at the stake. Okay? The grant funders looking at your program tracking, your financial controls, your reporting processes. These are all organizational administrative entity work. This is the workings of your organization, not just your program. They're wanting to know how strong is the organization. And when these things don't exist, the application fails. It just shows the grant funder that your organization isn't ready. You don't have your organizational structure set up. You don't have your internal workings of the organization set up. And so they perceive you not ready for the funds. And here's the quiet cost, the quiet cost of not having your organization structured properly. Time wasted, confidence lost, burnout increased, rejection normalized. Listen, you don't just lose the grants or the other streams or opportunities of funding. You've got 15 ways, avenues, channels by which money comes into your organization. And if you are not structured for that, or even if you did not know that, that's where your problem is. So now you're losing the grants, you're losing other funding opportunities, and you're losing momentum. And here's how those funders, those capital issuing authorities, how those funders actually decide who is ready. How do they decide who's ready for my donation, my contribution, my grant? How do they decide? Let me make it simple for you. Okay. The decision is into five basic questions. Okay. Five basic questions that funders ask. Number one, can this organization handle the money? That's not spending the money. Can you handle the money? That means budgets. That means control. That means reporting. Number two, is this organization stable without us? That you have other streams of source, other income sources, not just grants, not just you, not just the hope for a grant and the funder or the founder, the person who started it. Jen, I'm funding everything out of my own pocket. Do you have other sources of money? Is your organization financially stable without us? Number three, they're asking, is leadership shared or is it concentrated in one person? Do you have a board that's active? Do you have staff? Do you have systems that show roles and responsibilities within the organization? I'm not talking about the board chair, the secretary, the treasurer. That's not what I'm talking about. Okay. Can this organization explain what it does clearly and consistently? There's no vagueness, there's no confusion in your ability to articulate what you do and why what you do matters. What's the need for what you do? What's the impact of what you do? Can you explain that clearly and consistently? And then number five, will this organization still exist in 3 to 5 years? That means, do you have a plan? Do you have the structure? Do you have a sustainability model? If the answer to that is no, you're just winging it. You're just winging it. Jen, we've had our organization for the last 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years more, and we're still operating as a startup. No, we don't have a budget for the future. No, we don't have predictable revenue streams. No, we don't know how to find donors or funders or supporters. They don't know if your organization is going to exist in the next 3 to 5 years. If the answer to too many of these questions is unclear, the funder pauses. They're hesitant. They're hesitant. Not because you're doing bad work, but because your organization, the risk to giving to your organization feels too high. And why is this so confusing for many of you? Why is this so confusing for many of you? Most of you were never taught. Most of you were never taught how nonprofits are evaluated, how money decisions are made. Most of you were never taught how the internal structure of your organization affects funding decisions. Many of you were never taught how to prepare before asking for money. You were told, start a nonprofit, you can get a grant. And that sentence skipped everything that matters. And then when you try to fill in the gap, right? You try to fill the gap with random trainings, with templates, with AI tools, right? With CRMs, with hiring a grant writer, and then nothing works. Why? Because the foundation of your organization is still missing. Listen, you can't fix a readiness problem with a tool. You cannot fix a readiness problem with a tool. If I have put words to what you've been feeling, if you recognize yourself in any of these examples, if you finally understand why funding hasn't flowed the way you expected, here's what I want you to know. You're not broken. Your mission is not wrong. You're not failing. You were just never shown how funders decide who is ready. And that's exactly the work that I do. I help nonprofit leaders build the internal structure funders trust. I help nonprofit organizations clarify the roles of their leadership, to create real fundraising systems. I help nonprofit leaders stop chasing money prematurely, but positioning their organization to receive funding responsibly, to attract the donor and the funder, to build the trust that comes before the donation or the contribution. The truth is this: you can keep guessing or you can get clarity. Okay? You can keep guessing or you can get clarity. And if you're ready to stop losing time, energy, and opportunity, then I would love to have a readiness conversation with you. Okay? The longer your organization is stuck, the weaker your organization appears to the funder. Jen, I've been doing this work 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, 6 years, 10 years more, and I've been doing everything by myself. The longer you stay in that cycle, the longer the funder is able to see you're not ready. Let me give my money to an organization that's set up and structured and ready to move forward. Staying stuck is your business. You can keep guessing. Or we can put it together for you properly and quickly so that you can position your organization to receive the funding that you need. Those are the only two choices, all right? And the choice is yours. There's no pressure, there are no promises, just clarity about what's missing and what comes next. Because funding doesn't start with asking. It starts with being ready, structurally ready. It starts with being able to show the donor, the funder, the supporter, the contributor, that your organization is not only ready to receive their dollars, but that you are structured and positioned to be sustainable. That shows strength. That shows credibility. That shows financial responsibility. That shows that you're ready for their investment and that they can trust your organization with their investment. You then are fundable. You then are investable. Okay? I hope that I've been clear. I want to thank you so very much for listening in. Again, if you are ready to have this conversation, I want you to reach out to me. I want you to comment. I'm ready, Jen, for clarity. I'm ready to have that conversation for readiness. And let's get you started. Let's get you structured. Let's get you ready for funding in less than 90 days. Let's get you ready to receive the cash flow that is already yours so that your work can move forward without guessing, without struggling, and without being stuck. All right. I want to thank you again for listening, and I will see you next time.